All right. Well, there we are. Just kind of get this as scented as I can. Obviously, repping horror show. Y'all know me. Get a bit closer for the proceedings. And all right. Guess we are good. Very stoked to be joining all of you today. Book of the month, as we all too often do here on the Horror Show, here to Stephen King. And Zach King already getting in there. What is going on, my dude? I'm just gonna share this proper. Make sure all of these apps are donezoid. And yes, oh, we already have some peeps scrolling in. Okay. Oh, the title didn't register properly. Well, that stinks. I had to refresh the page like right before. One little bit of behind the scenes information, everybody, is that anytime I do this, I have to move. We don't want that. I have to move my computer from the office into a separate set. So yeah, you know, always get a little bit of infoage here, but I am stoked. Jacob, what is up, good sir? Hope you are well. Austin jumping through. Long days and pleasant nights to you as well, man. So I'm just going to share this linky dink, and we will get the process rolling. And it's unfortunate with the page refresh that I'm going to have to go back and, oh well, tis what it is. Yeah, when I was cruising back here, everybody, there was a very gnarly car crash right around the corner from my house. I was grabbing some lunch right before doing this, and it kind of shook me to the core a little bit. We're talking like 2 cars basically demolished, firefighters, cops, all that craziness. And I guess it was rather befitting with the madness that we're going to be discussing today for this book. So yeah, still, I mean, hopes and prayers and all that. But okay. Let's go live. But I hope, obviously, everybody, despite the Debbie Downer circumstances that I just mentioned, is having a fantabulous start to your weekend. I don't know if anybody is into the Super Bowl sort of stuff, but tomorrow we are actually going to be going to the Kevin Smith Movies pop-up restaurant that is starting here in Phoenix. And it's going to be here for, I think, the next 10 days, if I'm not mistaken. But Cecil, myself, Marshall Parker, Robert Toole, we're going to be doing a whole vlog about that because even though it is a horror channel, you know, we adore old K. Smithies. So, okay. Dolphin South, Stevie K. Now. So make sure this is in the group, and then we will get going. And also, as I mentioned in a post yesterday, this is also going to be a bonus unboxing because I just got a Joe Hill pre-order that I have been awaiting anxiously. I love Cemetery Dance, but boy, they take a long time to get books to me. I think it's Levidian Press, if I'm not mistaken, that did this 20th Century Ghost unboxing. So pretty stoked about that. Just sharing this to the group, and then we good, y'all. Obviously, chime in with thoughts, insights. If you're a fan of this book, if you're not super stoked on it and you think it's one of those overrated ones, or, you know, this was, ironically enough, one of the ones that I saw at the thrift stores. Like when I first started getting into Stephen King, even before I decided to do that monumental read and everything and go through all in chronological order, Cell was one of those, along with like From a Buick 8, you know, some of those early 2000s books of his, early to mid 2000s books, like, I don't know, before he had his King Assance, his Resurgence, those were a couple. Lacey Story also being another one, Black House being another one. Those are, I think that's where King kind of fell out of vogue as far as like pop culture, like the major mainstream sort of people. So I'm very, very excited to be discussing this one, and we are all posted, and we are ready to get this show on the road. Everybody, very excited. Okay, volume down. And we good. Okay, sweet. Long days and pleasant nights, fellow travelers along the path of the beam. I am known on this level of the tower as Jaime and Fuego, and if you please, you join me here for a bit of live palaver on Hail! The Stephen King. That's right, getting my voice back after a bout of the nastiness midway through last month. Boy, it was rough. But yes, I am feeling on the mend. I'm feeling better, and I'm so very stoked to be discussing for its 15th anniversary with all of you what I would most definitely, even if you don't love this book, I think that this is a massively underrated book. And we are talking about Cell. Cell came out in January of 2006, and I'm just going to get to my proper notes keys so I don't butcher the proper release. January 26th. So this actually had its 15-year anniversary not too far back, and this is one that it is some of the most cinematic writing that I think Sai King has ever done, most notably with a couple grisly set pieces he has in this. I mean, first and foremost, how the book opens up with everything going down with Clay. Clay is a graphic novel writer who has just gone to Boston from his hometown of, Kent Pond, Maine, and he has just sold his graphic novel, The Dark Wanderer, if I recall correctly, something like that. Anyway, he's gone to Dark Horse in Boston, and he is on cloud nine, man. He has just had the most impactful and amazing experience of his creative life. And then the shit hits the fan because there is a pulse that goes out to anybody with one of these little buggers, and all of a sudden they are just raging maniacs, man. And this is a book that Sai King actually dedicates to none other than Richard Matheson, but the one that makes a little bit more sense is George Romero, who just celebrated a birthday the other day. Very stoked about that. And yeah, the fact that he even calls these phonies, characters within the plot call them the crazies at various particular points. And now I'm actually probably in the minority that I kind of like that Crazies remake with Timothy Olyphantastic a little bit more than the original Romero version, but the idea remains the same. It's very similar to like 28 Days Later in the fact that they're rage zombies, but it's not like a bite sort of situation. It's if you hear that pulse, if you heard that frequency that was going through anybody with a cell phone that was in communication at the time, and the fact that it doesn't go away, like that pulse, whether terrorists constructed or whatever. Interestingly enough, the book doesn't necessarily give exact clarification about that. We just have a lot of theories and hypotheses from all of our characters within it. And yes, I will admit, and I think it was either Dan Corey or maybe it was Corey Woodcock. I'm trying to remember so desperately who in the group pointed out that they thought the Hail to Stephen King Facebook group, that is, that this book has a dynamic start and a fantastic finale, but it kind of fizzles in the middle. I would disagree with that because of the fact that, yes, after like all the stuff after meeting Jordan and the headmaster and just blowing the hell out of all those peeps on the soccer field, yes, everything thereafter until Clay gets some information about what happened to his wife and his daughter, and all the stuff with the what do they call him? I'm trying to remember. The dude in the Harvard jacket, yeah, the Raggedy Man. All that stuff. This story really echoes a lot of The Stand in a lot of ways. But whereas, and I have to give credit to Bev Vincent, the guy who has worked with Sai King on many different things, also wrote The Road to the Dark Tower and gave a lot of Tower junkies some essential information and insight and stuff like that. Bev Vincent said that in comparison and contrast to The Stand, this is King's apocalyptic story that feels much bleaker and much darker and more cynical. And I think that really derives from the fact that this is a anti-technology book, 100% anti-technology, man. And King even says in the linear notes, and I posted this just yesterday when I was reminding everybody about the stream, I was like, amused at the fact that King is like, you know, he lives in Bangor, Maine with his wife, Tabitha, the novelist, and he doesn't own a cell phone. With the immense amount of anti-Trumpy tweets that King was posting, I guarantee he has eventually joined the cell phone brigade at some particular point. But this was 2006, remember? And I didn't even get my first cell phone until, I think it was 2004, 2005, something like that. But nonetheless, we have these little miniature computers in our hands at this particular point, and it's just fascinating how just ingrained and essential to our lives they have become. And this was King commenting on the culture before it became as insanely prevalent. I mean, I still remember friends who had like pagers, man, like back in the day. Remember pagers, for God's sake? You know, where you still had to go to a landline to actually make that communication and stuff. And so, I don't know. This is a brutal book, and it's got some terrific characters. Definitely one of the most heart-wrenching deaths, I would declare, of anything that Sai King has done in what happens with this particular younger lady in the book. And so, I don't know, man. This is one that, while it's not perhaps as flawless as I like to put it on the pedestal of, I mean, it's only like 350 pages. And yes, in the third act, until we get to what's really going down, and especially some of the narrative conveniences that Sai King does here, where it's like, oh, these characters leave, and then they're compelled by the pulse to rejoin because they almost have like this proverbial mark of Canaan or Cain on their bodies and whatnot. But I don't know. I'm a big fan of this book. It's not top tier King, but it is still very strong, and I look forward to hearing all of your insights, peeps, the Hail to Stephen King Ka-Tet, about this. So jumping to the chat room, Austin says, it's amazing that 15 years ago, King predicted just how much phones would take over our lives and erase our minds, especially when you see 5-year-olds with iPhones. Yeah, man, all of my friends with kids, whether it's my guitar player or Cecil now, who has a child, although thankfully his kid is young enough to, not be just like drawn to the tablet sort of situation. But yeah, all of my friends with kids, it's like my dad used to call it the idiot box, and that was television. And yet, if you have a phone or a tablet or something internet connected, there is most definitely just that, I mean, glued to the tube, so to speak, sort of situation. And yes, it's only gotten worse as the years have gone on. Kazahana225 says, hello, arigato. Thank you for taking a little tune in. Dan Arredondo says, just finished reading The Long Walk and The Dead Zone. The Long Walk is actually a good thing to make mention of, because this is another one of those King stories, and you can tell he derived so much inspiration from Lord of the Rings, and shout out to Tolkien and all of the fans and stuff like that. I'm really tempted to go to a theater and watch those IMAX versions of The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings trilogies that were just released yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. They're trying their damnedest in the theater industry to actually get people out there. I don't know. Will I go to a theater before Godzilla vs. Kong? It's debatable. But back to the Tolkien reference is the fact that King derived so much inspiration from just like the long trudge, the long walk, so to speak. And he's done tons of stories, where there are characters just going on these journeys on foot, kind of a road story, so to speak. And this is indeed another one, because, Clay, after all of the madness first transpires, he meets Tom, he meets Alice, and it's just going from one place to another. They go back to Clay's hotel, and then and that's where the guy hangs himself. I've forgotten about that particular beat, where the dude who is working the front desk is so calm and cool and composed, and yet, hey, he obviously is raging internally at the nasty realization that society has crumbled and we're all pretty fudged. So I don't know. That was an interesting beat. But then you go to Tom's house and they hang out at Tom's house for a while. And then for whatever reason, since there's nothing better to do, Alice and Tom are like, okay, we'll go to find your son and your wife, Clay. Sure. We don't have anything else going on. So it is most definitely, as I tried to look at it from less of a praising standpoint like I did initially, and more of just a critique sort of perspective and whatnot. Yes, there are some just odd kind of conveniences throughout the story, but it's still, once again, it is gross and grisly at a lot of times. King doesn't necessarily write really horrific horror like he does when the pulse initially goes out and there's the businessman like chewing off a dog's ear, and the people getting ice cream and everything, and just as havoc ensues, it is really just, I don't know, it's some of the most blistering, just right for your face sort of writing that King has done. So Let's chug a look through and see what others have to say. Already going to jump in and say this is probably the best opening to a King book, at least in my opinion. That's what Jacob Dasma, dude, over in the UK has to say. No mercy, Mr. Fuego. Hope you're having a great one. Go Suns. Mr. Mercer, thank you so very much, man. Andrew Mercer, one of our beloved longtime horror show, just part of the extended family, and somebody that I wish we got to see a little more often. Yes, I am rocking my Suns gear. They play again tomorrow, but that is of ill consequence. You look so different without the beard, man, but about time for mine to go as well. Yeah, it was after I got sick a couple weeks ago, I was just like, I've got this weird, like, Methuselah COVID beard going down and stuff, and I don't know. Plus, I'm doing a little cosplay thing with Cecil tomorrow at the movies thing, so that's probably my excuse for taking this particular perspective. Maddie Jarson, what is up, good sir? You need to point me to some peeps that can help me out with a new logo for Hail to Stephen King, because we're actually going to be moving this show to Fridays in April when our channel starts season 7. It's going to be a big relaunch. It's going to be less content. We're only going to be going, I believe it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then on Sunday we're going to do a live stream. But Hail to Stephen King, it was first on Sundays, and then it moved to Saturday and Tuesday. But here in a couple months, it's going to be going on a Fright-tastic Friday, Fearful Friday. So look forward to that, at least in the coming weeks. That'll be something to take into account. But Maddie actually is responsible for the big assist for next weekend's Hail to Stephen King episode, which will be a pre-taped bit. But he sent me some versions of The Stand that people tried to make and just didn't happen. And I'm going to be giving some thoughts, giving some discussion. And ironically enough, it's the same weekend that we get the final episode of The Stand. And I know people have a lot of mixed feelings about that. I really wish that Cecil, Marcia, and myself had done more than just, the premiere and just kind of left it to spoiler discussion here next week after the finale. But I don't know. I don't hate it as much as a lot of people, so just take that into account. But Maddie says, hello. Saw it was 9 p.m., so thought I'd hop on while I work. Didn't reread Cell, though. When I read it, it didn't connect with me beyond the opening chapter. Yeah, it does, as I lamented earlier, it does drag in some of its middle portions, but there's so much interesting existential discussion about reliance upon technology. And that's one of the reasons why I dig this book so much, because I feel like it's literally King talking through his characters about the dangers and the conveniences and all of these different things. And obviously, it's just escalated astronomically in the meantime, since this was published 15 years ago. Holy smokies. Looks around after breaking sound barrier. Yeah. Mr. Mercer. Austin says, agree. Great commentary on what would happen if civilization was wiped out. And we had to start fresh, very similar to The Stand in that respect. Yeah, and it does have its similarities to, as I mentioned, The Long Walk and The Stand and some of those other stuff that King has published previously. But this most definitely, whereas The Stand, I feel like, approaches it from a very, dare I say, religious standpoint. This is from, as opposed to, beliefs in, bigger than us, sort of, just indecipherable, because those who believe in God, there's no proof that there is a higher power or something bigger, but it's just fascinating because he takes a drastically different approach in this, in the fact that, technology being a god and something worshipped and relied upon and all that different stuff. I don't know. It's just it's a fascinating narrative, because beyond all of those gross out sequences, this has something very, very deep to say. And I feel like it reflects a lot of King's beliefs as well. Jacob further goes, I also find the hive mind nature of the zombies in this one to be quite interesting. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would, considering I'm not really interested in zombies. Yeah, I think The Walking Dead, in a lot of ways, it made zombies boring for us. It was the most watched show on the planet for how many friggin' years? And I don't know, that's not to knock it, because I still watch it and I still enjoy it. But it was almost like that overkill situation. Give us more werewolf movies, or give us more, I don't know, witch movies or something like that. I can always say vampires, but you guys know how much I love my fingers. So, it's a little bit different of a situation. But yeah, this was, boy, I think this was before even The Walking Dead really hit proper. So the Romero credit is most definitely deserved and well worth. Okay, Brandon says, I thought Cecil was amazing. Actually, just read it. Sell derps, Fuego. I need to get my eyes checked. But just read it a few weeks ago. Before that, I read Dr. Sleep. Hey, forge forward, Brandon. Keep on with the reading, man. Very excited to reveal what the next book is, and a lot of people are gonna probably laugh about that. But okay. Austin also says Alice also refers to Night of the Living Dead. Yeah, they mentioned Dawn of the Dead specifically at one particular point. I thought it was funny where Alice was like, yeah, I have those Cinemax channels, you know. I mean, I've seen some of these movies that you're referencing, and there's lots of really cool Easter eggs in this. I mean, you've got everything from Juniper Hill mentioned at one particular point to, and this is a shout out to my dude Mike Kearns, Mike's book reviews. If you guys are not familiar, definitely jump over, subscribe, give that guy some love, and he likes to do those Easter egg multiverse connection sort of stuff. And I had totally spaced, because it's been a while since I've read this book, that in the finale, when they're at this like half set up like circus or I guess state fair, you know, expo, whatever the hell they call it in there, there is a reference to a half set up ride called Charlie the Choo Choo. And I was just like, my dude, he does not skimp on just making CRs like myself geek out properly. So Maddie Jorson says, released January 26th, my birthday. Didn't realize I shared it with a King book. Yeah, that's pretty badass, man. And Maddie goes on further to say, to me, Cell kind of felt like the start of King writing about technology he doesn't understand, an aspect which annoyed me a lot in the Mr. Mercedes trilogy. Well, yeah, Maddie, I mean, most definitely, I was very annoyed at the third and final entry of the Mr. Mercedes trilogy. And I was actually glad that they scaled that silliness back just a wee bit in well, first it was AT&T Audience Network, and now it's on Peacock. And that's actually something else to mention, guys. You will get the chance to see the third, and in my estimation, best season of none other than Bill Hodges and Mr. Mercedes. It's going to be releasing March 4th, and it adapts the second and my personal favorite of the books, the Finders Keepers novel. But back to Maddie's point, yeah, man, this is another one where King, he even admits early on in the book, you know, before it actually really gets revving and roaring, that he consulted a lot of people, most notably Robin Firth helped him out, and, you know, a couple other peeps. And so, yeah, anytime that King is just going off his gut feeling about stuff that maybe he doesn't understand very well, that is actually a very key criticism. I suppose Maddie's definitely right in that regard. That, yeah, I mean, King, when he has to extensively outsource research, maybe there's like some cracks in the foundation a little bit. But I still really love the plight of Clay, our main guy, and the fact that he is just so determined to find his son. It's like King writes very virtuous characters well, and this is no exception. Although there's instances where like people, I guess the camaraderie happens like really quickly. And I guess in these sort of situations where it's like, okay, it's live or die. I mean, bonds are forged much faster in that regard. But I mean, there's characters embracing and just like kissing each other's cheeks, and like I don't know, I guess terrific scenarios, maybe they just, I don't know, camaraderie happens a little bit more quickly. But that's one thing that King actually does a lot. And that actually makes me think of something else. Shout out to Corey Woodcock. I'm not sure if he's actually watching this or not, but Corey made a very amusing reference the other day about, just King and his humor, for instance. And I don't think King always writes humor very well, personally. You know, he writes peering into the darkness of just humanity and any sort of otherworldly nemesis that could be, you know, lurking much closer than we possibly suspect. But King doesn't necessarily write like that sort of everybody just having a belly laugh sort of moment. Corey, I was thinking of you in this, man, because we have one where very similar to the Wireman and Edgar, if I remember his name correctly, from excuse me, from Doomickey, having this little laugh about being like the bride of the Godfather or something like that, and they just have this uncontrollable moment of laughter. Late in the book, there is a similar moment to that where somebody is like talking about this like levitation ability that some of these crazies, the phonies have adapted, and there's like a crass comment, and then everybody just laughs uncontrollably. King really likes doing those. I don't know. It's just it's amusing to me, and it's something that I never would have thought of until Corey pointed it out. So props and shout out to that. Okay, as we continue cycling through. Okay. Wow, well, somebody's got a terrific name. Just discovered this show. This is great. I blanked your mom in the blank. Okay, terrificness. Okay, you have been acknowledged, truly. Okay. Is the next book Dreamcatcher by any chance? I'm halfway through reading it right now, and I'm really enjoying it. The Nickelback of Stephen King books. That is friggin' funny, Jacob. Holy smokes, man. Disliking it because it's cool to do so. Yeah, well, that's the thing. I am ready to give Dreamcatcher another chance. And yes, the cat is out of the bag, as I alluded to yesterday on the Facebook group. Dreamcatcher celebrates its anniversary 20 years ago on February 20th, ironically enough. Dreamcatcher was released, originally titled Cancer. And yes, that will be the February book of the month as we await the release of later. So, okay, what else we got before I jump into my notes proper? Angus Johnson, good to see you, man. Says, sorry I'm late, just got into the stream. Maddie says, I like that the main character is a comic artist instead of a writer for a change. Yeah, close enough, I suppose. But, you know, I thought that, I don't know, maybe that's a nod to his son, because this was around the time, 2006, I think, was when, you know, Joe was really starting to, maybe it was a little bit before, but, I mean, Joe had, I think he started Lock and Key right around this time, and it's just going to pain me to no end if I don't properly check this out. But actually, maybe it's 2012 now that I think about it. Let's double check, everybody. Okay, Welcome to Lovecraft was 2008. So I know Joe had written the Spider-Man story, at least at that particular point. But yeah, in any event, if you haven't read Lock and Key, holy shizzle, we did proper reviews of that on this channel, and I am so very stoked. Okay. Do you think Stephen King would ever write a graphic novel, Fuego? Well, Angus, he actually did, man. He's co-written a few. So there was American Vampire that he wrote half of with Scott Snyder. And I mean, what else? There was, oh boy, I'm trying to recall the name of the adaptation. I think it was called, no, that wasn't Rage. Goodness. Bottom line, King has written in the visual stratosphere priorly, and I mean, all of that stuff is most definitely worthwhile, even if he didn't directly write, like the Dark Tower comics, for instance. But I don't know. I always love when he delves into a visual form, and that brings me to a point that I had yet to mention, is the fact that Sai King actually penned the screenplay for the 2016 adaptation of Cell. Oof, wasn't very good. There's something, for whatever reason, about King adapting his own work. And while I was just revisiting the 1994 miniseries of The Stand with Lady Catherine, I gotta say, more often than not, when King is actually writing screenplays for his own stuff, and that kind of gives me a little bit of just caution with the upcoming Lisi story that's going to be arriving later this year on Apple TV Plus. I'm like, oh boy, King wrote all the scripts himself. I don't know. King made a very deliberate decision to alter the ending of this book for whatever reason, and I hate the changed ending. I hate the changed ending. You know, even if I love that song, "You'll Never Walk Alone," you know, and my little brother loves his Liverpool and whatnot, but man, it's like, I don't know. They went in a drastically different direction, and everybody thought that it was like, man, the reteaming of the 1408 peeps and John Cusack and Samuel L. Jackson, this shit is gonna rock. And it starts really good, but maybe it shows the flaws of the pacing in some ways, because I love the recreation of the soccer field moment, and but everything else, I don't know. Aside from those cinematic beats that I've praised so much here in this review thus far, everything else I've just been kind of in any event. Don Rains shows up. Love the book, hate the movie. Yep, Don, I was just echoing your sentiments right there. Truly and wholeheartedly. Man, I forgot. Dylan O'Shea says, can I post spoilers here? I want to ask a question about the ending. Oh, yes, absolutely. All of these, anytime it is a book of the month discussion, everybody, just to let y'all know, please spoil it up. That's like the nature of this discussion, and it's one of the things that I enjoy extensively and take significant pride in. So, and Don goes on further to say the new Stand series sucks. Don, I actually politely disagree. It's not without its flaws, but well, I mean, Cecil wants me to keep my thoughts under wraps, which is why I held off on doing those little 1-minute Instagram discussions about it. But I found positives in the Mist TV series. Okay, so you guys know that I'm significantly more forgiving than a lot of people when it comes to this sort of discourse and whatnot. But I really enjoyed the new Larry Underwood more so than I thought. And actually, Skarsgård, even dancing Skarsgård, you know, it's a different take on Flag. I was a little averse to it initially. I also like Odessa Young more than I thought I would, but character development in this, aside from like Harold, paper thin character development. We'll get to that in due time next weekend. But okay, Austin gives us the first super chat. Much appreciated. Helps us keep the lights on here at the Horror Show. And Austin declares the film does have some interesting references. There's a call for Flight 1919. Clay pulls a gun from an NRA member's cold, dead hands. And the lookout is very much like the soldier in 28 Days Later. And 28 Days Later, most definitely, and the fact that those are also rage zombies, so to speak, or at least kind of that ilk and accord and whatnot. But whoops, not first-time viewer says Terror Reels. What is up, Terror Reels? Thanks for cruising in, at least for a moment. Dawn continues to say, I think the 1994 series was better for the understand. Haha, Dancing Flag was funny. Yeah, I don't know. I don't hate this version of The Stand like a lot of people. But so now it is time for me to actually go into my notes proper, because you guys know I all too often, I've got my little Gandalf goblet here. I like to just wax intellectual just right off the top of my head and then segue into later thoughts. So, as we mentioned, January 26th, happiest birthday, belated birthday to Maddie, obviously, was when in 2006 this came out. And it's very amusing to me because at the onset, right off the bat, Clayton Riddell is described by King as a man of no particular importance to history. And I thought that was just ironic in the fact that it's a very kind of cynical and sarcastic way of describing the everyman, which is, I mean, King writes those sort of characters notoriously, and he writes them very well. Somebody that you can relate to, somebody you can root for, and that is most definitely Clay, to a T. I contended that some of Cy King's most cinematic opening writing as the Pulse hits, which we talked about already. Already mentioned Juniper Hill. See, that's the thing. Like a lot of these, I just start just railing and ranting, and I mentioned them even before. I thought King describing it as Massachusetts, I thought that was incredibly funny for whatever reason, and it seemed like a very Maine sort of way to kind of, even though you root for all of their teams, just to kind of cast shade a little bit, I thought that was pretty funny. Yes, the sound of the devil firing a shotgun in hell. And just the constant belief that it's terrorists specifically, because this is post 9/11. And you guys know that whether it's Just After Sunset or this book and various others, a lot of King's post 9/11 writing was very driven and very inspired by those horrific events. And it seeped into a lot of his storytelling in a fascinating fashion, at least in my regard. And so there's a passage from, ironically enough, page 19 early in this book that I wanted to spotlight. And so here we go. So Clay shouted and planted his left foot behind the lunatic's backpedaling legs. It would occur to him later that the body knows how to fight when it has to, that it's a secret the body keeps, just as it does the secrets of how to run or jump a creek or throw a fuck or quite likely die. And there's no other choice. That under conditions of extreme stress, simply takes over and does what needs doing while the brain stands off to one side, unable to do anything but whistle and tap its foot and look up at the sky, or contemplate the sound a knife makes going through the portfolio of your wife. The portfolio your wife gave you for your 28th birthday, for that matter. So King is very, and this reminds me in some aspects of the opening of the second part of Pet Sematary, where King is talking, and it's a theme he's revisited countless times, like where you see something so scary and so effed up that like you are forever shook and instincts kicking in. And King has written about this quite a few times, and it fascinates me every time because it really, like, one thing this book definitely examines a lot is what happens with our instinctual, just primordial programming, I guess you could say, if like the slate is wiped clean. And it's something that he, explores into a fascinating fashion, as I mentioned earlier in this, and I really, really dig it. So obviously, once again, just to reiterate, if you guys have particular thoughts about any specific point within this novel, please chime in, give us your thoughts. And 18 minutes in eternity ago, and moving like the pendulum of a Godfather clock on speed. Just the fact that like most catastrophic stuff, it's not a slow burn of emergence. It hits like a sack of bricks to the back of the friggin' head. And that's why it's like in the mere span of 18 minutes and an eternity ago, Clay's life and the lives of pretty much everybody across the planet changed drastically and cathartically. And it's just, I don't know, I really, really dug that particular position. We did talk about the fact that the hotel attendant just can't fathom and can't deal with the nastiness, with this horrible turn of events that has transpired. And he hangs himself, despite such a stoic and composed demeanor, just, could not hang with it. And then another interesting interaction that I wanted to make mention of is I said that this wasn't like a religiously driven book compared to The Stand, and it's not, but yet there is still the callback of the heavyset lady who thinks that Tom, despite Tom being a gay man, thinks that Tom and Clay are taking Alice for some sort of salacious, nefarious purposes or whatever. And I don't know. She gets all revelation on their asses, and it's one of the more fascinating because that people that are already religious, they would most definitely cling even closer to it in this sort of apocalyptic situation. And then there's obviously others who would like thief on the cross that shit, and they're like, oh, the end is near, so I must repent, sort of thing. I don't know. I find that discourse, that very brief interaction, to be very fascinating. More so, dare I say, than a lot of the other people who are non-phonies or crazies, as they go on to call them. I don't know. Late in the book, so I love the headmaster character. I think he is fascinating, and although he does have kind of a weird little situation going on with Jordan, but nonetheless, the book kind of loses me a little bit in the third act when we meet a couple other characters. I believe it's Ray, Dan, and Denise. Denise being the pregnant woman. Like after the loss of Alice, and Alice, once again, her death is seriously soul crushing. And yet it's very interesting the way King frames it as these like Mark of Cain sort of peeps, because, the fact that they kill a flock, which is another one of those supremely cinematic situations with taking all the propane and just the flock mentality, and the fact that they're all on the soccer field and they go and they blow up a crap ton of them. That is terrific writing, man. And, King often, everybody talks about the fact that he writes characters so believably and wonderfully. He most definitely does. But this is one of the few books where just the set pieces, these set pieces rival like stuff in the interludes from It, for instance, where it's just chronicling a horrifying, violent, like mass murderous sort of situation. Whether it's the Easter egg hunt, whether it's the shootout in the 20s or 30s or whatever it is, the whole mobster sort of situation, whether it's the 1800s-ish bit with all the guys at the lodge and the loggers and whatever. These are some of King's most cinematic set pieces that I will contend that he's ever written, and that's still one of the things that I love so very much about this. And even the finale, with the school bus and the Rick bombs and all that. There is a lot of really, really cool stuff. But I don't know if I love these characters to the same level that I do a lot of other, King classics, whether it's, Johnny Smith or, anyone from the Losers Club or whatever. But still, there's very fascinating dialogue that is interspersed amongst all those set pieces and stuff. So as I continue forging, okay, so another bit that I wanted to call attention to is paragraph 3 of page 85. So let's jump to that so I can just give my thoughts here. And I did the blasphemous thing of actually marking this book because this was definitely one that I got at Goodwill. And okay, so they saw we had built the Tower of Babel all over again, and on nothing but electronic cobwebs. And in a space of seconds, they brushed those cobwebs aside, and our tower fell. Tower. All this they did, and we three are like bugs that happened by dumb, dim luck alone to have avoided the fall of a giant's foot. All this they did, and you think they could not have encoded a signal telling the affected ones to simply fall asleep and stop breathing 5 hours later? What's that trick compared to the first one? Not much, I'd say. So it just further goes to show that there is so much speculation and theorizing from our main characters, but King, intriguingly enough, does not give any concrete answers or revelation as to how or why this happened. It's more so just dealing with the situation. Because, Tom and Clay and Alice, they head north, and they're trying to get to his family, and then in turn they bring on Jordan, and the stuff with the headmaster. That it's the evolution of the affected that I do find very fascinating in this, and not just the hive mentality, not just the flock syndrome, but the fact that yes, we do have that raggedy man in the Harvard hoodie who basically is communicating for them, but despite the fact that their minds have been wiped clean, there is since humans are some of the most intelligent creatures on this planet, there is adaptation and there is cognitive improvement that happens to the degree that they're even talking in Latin at some particular points. Some of them, even the ones who are affected with a half pulse, it's interesting how maybe the strength of it as you go later, if you're affected by it, and that's the thing, they are hoarding all of these, non-phony people together and trying to let them listen to a cell phone so they get infected. But the infection isn't as strong as it was early on. And it is funny to me that King has this character of Jordan who is like the tech savant, who's just going into all of this discourse and whatnot. But flocking, telepathic groupthink, as he describes it. And yes, they are adapting and getting smarter. At least the ones who were initially affected at the first pulse, and so on and so forth. The flashlight people, as they begin to call themselves, because of the fact that they're all going around at night, because at night is when all of those peeps, they bed down in their flocks, and so that's the safest time to travel. This is how it goes when Homeland Security is canceled due to lack of sanity. Another interesting little quip. But, I have to also mention that I was really I was shook by the fact that I didn't remember Alice carrying around this little baby Nike and, this bloodstained baby Nike. And it was just her means of reminding herself the severity and the extent of the nastiness that has transpired. It's not just adults, it's not just older people, that are, suffering and have, befallen this. It was a very troubling reminder, and I had completely forgotten about that. So I see Austin's got another super chat. Rocking the 20. Holy smokies, man. You're a generous gentleman, man. Let's see what you got to say. I was not planning to do the ebb and flow just yet, but let's get to it. Okay, scrolling through just so I don't have to retread. My favorite quote in the book is, "This was madness, but this was a mad world," which made me perfectly in sync. Yeah, good call, dude. Awesome with the shout out. Don says, "Not everyone's body knows how to fight. Not everyone has that killer instinct." Yeah, that's actually a good point. There are, I think, timid people perhaps that just I don't know. Good point. I'm not gonna kind of berate that or anything of that nature. Hello, was the movie better than 1408? I only watched 1408. No, the movie was most definitely not better than 1408. I was significantly disappointed with this film, regrettably. But okay, give me the grade. Says, what's up? What's up? Don says Cell was okay, book was better, more scary. Okay, so just a little conversation there. Okay, Austin also goes on to say, I like how Jordan buries the headmaster in his garden, just like Franny buries her dad in the garden in the stand. Wow, good call, good connection that obviously went right over my head. Okay, so now to Austin's super chat as we are chug-a-lugging along here. Austin says, I have far-fetched Dark Tower theory I want your opinion on. Could the Raggedy Man, president of Harvard, be the Crimson King and the film Crazies Breakers? I would say no. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of speculation and consideration there, like, oh, is the man who walks behind the rose flag or the Crimson King or whatever. I mean, just because it's an iconic villain doesn't necessarily, as much as I love the fact that King goes back to RF so many times. I dig the hell out of that. The fact that, whether he's Richard Ferris or, whatever, the fact that he can take on these different iterations. I dig that. But I also believe that it doesn't all have to be connected evil, and I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of other heavy hitters out there, that are a part of the process and are to be equally feared. It's not, as much as I love the connectivity, it doesn't all have to be connected, if that makes sense. Because this is obviously, guys, this is another level of the tower. This is not the level of the tower where Captain Trips has happened. This is its own thing in and of itself. Daniel Corey cruising through. I love both John Cusack and Samuel L. Jackson, but they both felt extremely miscast in this adaptation. Anyone agree, disagree? I most definitely, Dan, thought that Samuel L. Jackson was the wrong person to play Tom. 100% the wrong person to play Tom. I mean, they could have gone with like a Stanley Tucci, I want to say. They could have gone with, they could have even gone like a Mads Mikkelsen, or there's a lot of other, even Colin Firth. I'm speaking both of their names because I just watched Supernova, and it's a terrific movie and very sad. Loved it. In any event, yes, I think that, and also they were, Cusack especially, man, going through the motions. They really it wasn't the sort of inspired acting. Like, that's the weird thing about Cusack. Cusack, lately for me, he kind of feels like almost the way Bruce Willis, like you can tell when Bruce Willis is like into a role, and then you can tell when he's mailing it in, man. And Cusack, unfortunately, like I thought Cusack was great in that the Prime show Utopia. I thought he was great in that, but yet a couple other things I'd seen him in recently, he felt very just checked out. So I don't know. I guess you have to be inspired by a project, enthused and whatnot. And I was just expecting a lot more from my high fidelity homie in this particular regard. But it is what it is. So back to the notes. Yes, I mentioned Alice carrying around that baby Nike. Oh, it's rough. It's rough. I also found it was intriguing, the whole music, like kind of lullaby factor that we get. In fact, that they're carrying around all of the phonies and the crazies or whatever you want to call them. The fact that they're carrying around these like big old jukeboxes and just listening to stuff like "Wind Beneath My Wings," Bette Midler, and these sort of Dean Martin, and these like slow, soothing, just kind of pop fare, just to kind of soothe their souls or whatever is remaining of them. And so, yeah, I thought that was also interesting as well. What do you think a brain is? Big old hard drive. And that's something that Jordan contends in the fact that, and he also goes into further discussion about in the fact that they perceive that there's a worm in the pulse. And so the initial like computer programming, this is very science fiction horror in the fact that like you have writers that like a Crichton, for instance, that go into in-depth, just explanation for things happening. And then there's more of the fantastical, which is, I love him to pieces. I love you, Psy King. But yes, there is most definitely just theoretical, hypothetical, bordering on the impossible. And yet that's some of the most fun stuff that I read and that I watch is stuff that is completely out of the realm of reason. And so, yes, King's discussion about that is pretty interesting. So another bit of existential talk that as we are almost at an hour, so I'm definitely going to have to wrap things up here momentarily. But so there's some interesting existential discussion, page 159. and let's get to it. Okay, and this is coming from the headmaster, and he says, yes, the head agreed. At bottom, you see, we are not Homo sapiens at all. Our core is madness. The prime directive is murder. What Darwin was too polite to say, my friends, is that we came to rule the earth not because we were the smartest or even the meanest, but because we have always been the craziest, most murderous motherfuckers in the jungle, and that is what the Pulse exposed 5 days ago. And just those sort of observations and assessments, it's passages like that that really make me enjoy this book, because it is, as Bev Vincent said, it is very boldly, darkly declarative of its assessment of humanity and our core nature. And for that reason, man, I mean, despite its flaws, I really enjoy the hell out of this book. What says y'all? Okay. So as we are cruising towards the finale, and I did make mention that we were going to do a brief unboxing here in just a sec. The smell of them was rich, stick in your throat. Yeah, just the discussion of all of the rotting corpses, and not even the rotting corpses, the walking, living ones. It's on par with the Lincoln Tunnel situation that we got with Larry in The Stand, and I absolutely love it. Okay, when does a collaborator stop becoming a collaborator? I'm trying to remember specifically why I made reference to that, but so yes, we've got everything that happens in the back half of this, where I feel like it loses its steam a little bit. After the death of Alice, I feel like, and just the meaninglessness of it, and then also the fact that the guys who kill the marked one, they go and they have this ritual suicide, like one crucifies the other and all that. That's another thing where we've got some similarities to The Stand. People get crucified, yeah. But yeah, the back half of this, as we are getting to the eventual finale, the revelation about what happened with Clay's wife and the fact that she turned, and him trying so desperately to get to his son, I definitely got some vibes of The Mist at the end of this, actually, with just a father trying so desperately to find and protect a child, and all of that. Yes, there is a third and final just destruction of epic proportions, and yes, Ray's sacrifice is all admirable and whatnot, and peeps go their separate ways. But Clay, he does eventually find his son, but his son got one of those like half pulse sort of things where he's like, he can't control his bowels and he's drooling. And Clay has this theory that he had discussed with Jordan at one particular point, where if he can obtain a cell phone, it would almost be like two minuses making a positive, and like giving his son his brain back. It's a little far-fetched of a finale. And yes, this is fantasy, and it's like because movie or because book, check your brain in at the door, whatever it is. But I didn't love the ending of this, unfortunately. Survival is like love, both are blind. I found that was interesting. But lamenting phonies have been better for Earth than normies. And that's actually one of the last aspects in King's cynicism that we get to, is where late in the book, somebody basically waxes that, okay, look at how greedy, controlling, destructive, like all of these different things. Are we like better for the Earth, these cognizant, coherent people, than just the weird, mindless kind of drones that could be potentially taking it over? I don't know. It's up to debate, man. It is up to debate, but I still find a lot of the discussion within this book, despite the fact that at 350 pages, it is not a lengthy King tome, but it still feels a little long in the tooth, and that's pacing problems that some people have called attention to. But a lot of the questions that this book asks, I find more fascinating than really a lot of other stuff that he's written. Is it perfect, blemishless? Hell no. But I mean, it's one of the most distinctively different Sai King things that he has ever written. So there we have it, everybody. If you have any final thoughts, please make sure to throw them in the comments below. But now we are getting into the nitty-gritty. If I can actually open this mofo. because I realized that I do not have a shredder. Okay, well, it's going to be like that. All right. So this is from, this is just not going to, this ain't going to happen, man. Okay. They really take this sucker up, my lord. Oh, Lord, yes. Okay. There we go. Man, some earnest effort, but well worth it. All right. And there's apparently more earnest effort. You guys can laugh at me all you want. Let's just give a shout out to Levidian Publications for this deluxe edition of 20th Century Ghosts. Shout out to them. And this is going to be a much more, we'll just go like that. Okay. These things are fortified packaging, as I commend them on, because you definitely don't want something that you put like $100 on a credit card for. Damaged in any sense of the word. But in case y'all are unfamiliar, I'll just discard this and clean it up afterwards. But in case you are unfamiliar, 20th Century Ghosts was the first official release from Sai King's son, Joe Hill. And I think I have 2 other copies of it, because this was one of those releases where there were some exclusives to the US release, some exclusives to the UK release. I believe it was actually initially released in the UK. But it's got all kinds of fantabulous stuff. So let's give this a gander. Yeah, how about them apples? That's right. And oh wow, I love the distinctiveness of this. Like, those are actual indentations and stuff. I mean, I love this sort of slipcase loveliness. But let's take a gander inside. Oh boy, right off the bat. So an exclusive art print limited to 1,750 copies, 1,750, signed by artist Vincent Sammy. So scope that out. I'm not sure if that's supposed to be the girl from the story, 20th Century Ghosts. It is of high likelihood. Man, there is a lot of bangers in here, guys. The Cape is in here. Best New Horror is really awesome. I'm not super big on You Will Hear the Locust Sing. It's the one where the kid basically starts turning into a bug. Abraham's Boys, which has some Dracula connections. That one's really good. The Black Phone, which is being currently made into a film by none other than Scott Derrickson, who did Sinister and obviously Doctor Strange. He left the project and Sam Raimi jumped in. But yeah, The Cape is great. Last Breath is really good. My Father's Mask is fantastic. So this is definitely, we've got a introduction to the introduction by Kristopher Golden. And yeah, just beautiful. I love the red around there. And I believe this is illustrated, so let's maybe try to find some illustrations for y'all to take a gander at. Yeah. Well, somebody said in the Stephen King, the Hail to Stephen King Facebook group recently that Joe loves referencing his father's work, and I appreciate that. It's a different level of the tower. It's a different sort of situation in that regard. Yeah, that's pretty cool, man. Very romantic. I can dig. Pop art is another one that a lot of people have pointed out as what they kind of consider to be one of the standouts here. So a little bit of that right there. Let's see what else we got. I'm going to try to just briefly show all the illustrations before we call it a day here. Yeah, so it does appear that we have one for, I love the 50s drive-in kind of vibe that we got there. That's pretty badass. And let's see, what else we got? This is from Abraham's Boys, which is the one that I had mentioned has the Dracula connection. So maybe there's not an illustration for each bit, but yeah, Levidian Publications, man, I am definitely a big fan. Better Than Home, that's the baseball-related one. So nothing of like the supremely scarific variety. I know that Joe enjoys. Okay, so Black Phone, yeah. So we got image of this otherworldly phone that this kid who gets kidnapped starts getting calls from. But I don't mean to just bore y'all to pieces with all of this right here. But yeah, this is a pretty dope investment, and I'm definitely you see, that's cool. If you guys haven't read the Cape is awesome. It's about somebody suddenly realizing they have superhero ability, and in turn they use it for nefarious purposes. It's been adapted into a couple different comics. They did 3 different series, as a matter of fact. Bobby Conroy comes back from the dead. Just in one last shout out, this story is actually about a guy who is on the set of Dawn of the Dead, and he meets an ex-girlfriend who is now married and, kind of doing her own thing and whatever, but they're extras. They're both playing zombies in Dawn of the Dead. And, Joe has that very close connection to George because of the fact that he just, once again, yesterday would have been George Romero's 81st birthday, if I'm not mistaken. And so that's, obviously credit where it's due, man. But Joe has a even bigger connection with George because of the fact that he was in Creepshow. Joe Hill, Stephen King's son, was that assholey little kid trying to extract revenge on his father in the film. So hopefully you guys had a little bit of enjoyment and excitement checking out this. I'm not sure if it is still available from Levidian Publications, but there are a lot of fantastic stories in 20th Century Ghosts. Joe Hill, not to knock Owen, but Joe is definitely the one where the apple has not fallen very far whatsoever. And now, as we end the proceedings, I extend a grande gracias to all of you for taking the time to spend some of your Spooktacular Saturday with me. Next Saturday will be that discussion of some of those unreleased stand stories, some of those scripts that, various people tried to adapt it, including Josh Boone previously, including Ben Affleck, and even Romero. So more Romero talk. George was at one point trying to adapt it himself in the 80s, but I very much look forward to discussing the finale of this new iteration of The Stand from CBS All Access with all of you, and talking next Saturday about those scripts. But yes, the February book of the month, just to double down and remind, is one that I have not revisited in quite a while. I've talked a lot of smack about this book, man. There's aspects of it that I appreciate, but I've gone on record to say that Dreamcatcher and Bag of Bones are my least favorite Stephen King books, although honestly, Wendy's Button Box is probably that at this particular point. However, I am very curious to revisit the book that he called Cancer at one particular time, over 600 pages of this monster, and, get Kurtz and, all of those, Heart of Darkness references and whatnot. But yes, I'm actually very curious to give this one a new look and a perhaps different viewpoint and less of a drastic and negative assessment, so to speak. But I'm just going to give one last little look here at the chat. It's always a bummer that later in the broadcast, I feel like there's more people than earlier on, but that's just kind of the way it goes. Okay, Don says, good theory, Austin. I love both Cusack and Samuel L. Jackson, but they both felt extremely miscast. Yep, we did cover that. Just trying to make sure before I call it a day that I didn't know Cusack was in Stand By Me. No, definitely not in Stand By Me if I mentioned that incorrectly. But 1408. Oh, damn. That is a revelation to me, Matt. Holy smokes. Okay. He was the older brother. That's nutsoid. Okay. I forgot. It shows how long it's been since I've watched that film. I know it has a particular golden anniversary that is coming later this year, and I will be reviewing it. Coincidentally started the audiobook for 20th Century Ghosts today. Yeah, and that's just to Maddie's point, I have reviewed everything Joe Hill has released on the horror show here. So you can find reviews of 20th Century Ghosts and all of his novels, like Heart-Shaped Box and The Fireman, which is so friggin' underrated, and Horns and all those other cool things. Okay, my biggest problem with this book was that zombies that act like cell phones in the way they have to recharge and communicate and stuff. It's one of the lamest ideas King ever had, in my opinion. Touche. I'm not gonna argue with that. Some movie also marks the first time Owen Teague was cast as a King character. Man, I have to give Maddie some serious credit here, because he all too often comes with knowledge even beyond my own a lot of the time, or stuff that is potentially fallen through the cracks in my head as the years have gone on. Okay. Okay. Oh, no, Sharon Beveridge showed up briefly. Read 20th Century Ghost years back. Some stand out more than others. Do love his writing for sure, though. Okay. Natrama says it looks great. I've wanted an illustrated King book for some time. Well, that was obviously a King Kid book, but okay. Dawn says From a Buick 8 is my least favorite. That's one that honestly gets a lot of hate, unfortunately. Anyway, Jacob's peacing out, says enjoy the rest of your day, man. Looking forward to Dreamcatcher next month. And I look forward to your insight, good sir. Hope that you are doing well. And obviously, once again, a grande gracias to all of y'all in the Hail Ka-Tet. And for anybody who has tuned in here, if you would like some further palaver, the Hail to Stephen King Facebook group across the GZ as far as membership goes. And there is fantastic palaver there. I have been Jaime and Fuego. You can find Walt on all social media sectors like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, here on YouTube. This weekend, I'm actually on my personal channel, going to be dropping my thoughts on the 11 different, this one goes to 11, films that I watched during the Sundance Virtual Festival. There's some very interesting films, some films that just broke my heart apart, most notably Mass, which is short for mass shooting. Boy, that film was just holy shit, was it intense. Loved it though, and so yes, stay tuned. Look forward to those. Obviously, like, share, subscribe here on the Horror Show channel. We greatly appreciate your patronage. Austin, thank you so very much for the super chats. Helps us keep the lights on, as I always say. Means a hell of a lot. And yeah, guys, I look forward to seeing you at the beginning of March. And I'm going to be reviewing later, like right away, like right when it comes out. That is my intention. Maybe we'll do a spoilers discussion at the end of the month. I'm not sure, because there's 2 other golden anniversaries in the month of March for a potential book of the month, including Roadwork and The Green Mile. So yeah, in the comments below, if you get this far into this hour-plus video, if you would prefer one of those to be the live book of the month discussion, definitely vocalize, make your voice heard. It is greatly appreciated. And I've been Fuego. Y'all have been Rad Status. And until the Wheel of Ka comes around once more, hasta luego, amigos, constant readers and viewers alike. Say thank you for the palaver here today. Hopefully we share more of it sooner rather than later. And until then, remember to stay scared and read Stephen King, even if I wasn't the biggest fan of this one. I'm going to give it another chance. Thanks for giving me a chance today, guys. I appreciate the hell out of y'all. And until Dreamcatcher, I'll see you later. Peace.